Good afternoon, Jets Nation. Welcome to the Jew Jets Show. And with Joe Douglas saying the backup quarterback position is going to be a priority this offseason, I've compiled a list of the 11 top backup quarterback candidates for the Jets. So without any hesitation, let's go ahead and dig into this list. Starting off with Gardner Minshew. Minshew was, of course, the Colts' backup this season, but was pretty much their starter after Anthony Richardson suffered a season-ending shoulder injury very early on in the year. Now, Minshew, of course, led the Colts to a 9-8 record, almost took them to the playoffs. I have a feeling that he's not going to be a backup quarterback next season and actually going to be some team starter. Could definitely see him going to a quarterback needy team and becoming their day one starter. But if he doesn't go to a team and become their starter, I think there's a very high chance he stays in Indianapolis. So while he's probably like my number one guy that I would want, I just really don't know what his chances are of actually going to a new team and being their backup quarterback. Moving on, we have Jacoby Brissett. Brissett is also one of the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL. He's pretty much played at a high level wherever he's been as a backup quarterback. But this past season in Washington, he only played 2 games. But in those 2 games, he played really well. Almost led a 20-point comeback victory against the New York Jets. Like, Jacoby Brissett still has that dog in him, and if he hits the open market, definitely should be someone the New York Jets give a call. Next up on the list is Tyrod Taylor, who's been a journeyman quarterback for a majority of his long NFL career. And this past 2 years, he's been with the New York Giants. And this past season, whenever he was on the field for the Giants, they played their best football. They were competitive, and pretty much every single game Tyrod Taylor started in or appeared in. And he also showed this year that he still has that big playability inside of him. He has a rocket arm, launching multiple long, deep ball touchdowns this year with the Giants. So if he hits the open market and is interested in staying in New York, Jets definitely should give him a call. Next guy up is Mason Rudolph, who is very interesting because, well, he's about to start a playoff game in a few hours, but he's also one of Mike Tomlin's guys. If Mike Tomlin stays in Pittsburgh, I think Mason Rudolph's going to stay in Pittsburgh. If Mike Tomlin goes to a new team, I think there's a very high chance we see Mason Rudolph go to that team. But I say he's one of Mike Tomlin's guys because this offseason, last offseason, Mason Rudolph re-signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers to a 1-year, $5 million deal, despite them already having Mitchell Trubisky and Kenny Pickett on the roster. He was willing to re-sign with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was willing to re-sign him to a 5-year deal for him to be their quarterback 3. That's insane. But it ended up working out for Pittsburgh because he started the last 3 games of the season. Pittsburgh won all 3 of those games and is now going to the playoffs. But Mason Rudolph, he's not going to do anything to completely elevate your offense, but he shows that he can be a good game manager and can win football games, which is exactly what he did for the Steelers this season. I don't think he hits the open market, but if he does, it definitely should be someone the New York Jets give a call to. Next up on the list is Joshua Dobbs, who had a very up and down year. I mean, it was also a very interesting season as well. He spent the entire offseason with the Cleveland Browns. 10 days before the season started, he gets traded to the Arizona Cardinals, and then at the trade deadline, he gets traded to the Minnesota Vikings. And with the Cardinals, of course, the Cardinals didn't win very many games with Josh Dobbs, but he at least kept them competitive and kept them kind of a fun team. And then he gets traded to the Vikings, wins his first few starts in Minnesota, and then falls off a cliff. Joshua Dobbs is just a very inconsistent quarterback. He has shown that he can win games if need be, but he's just very inconsistent. He's going to give you a good game every now and then, but most of the time you're going to not see the best from Josh Dobbs. Personally, he wouldn't be very high on my list for backup quarterbacks, but if the Jets are interested, if he's interested, and it comes down to it, I wouldn't be mad about signing Joshua Dobbs. Next guy on the list is Ryan Tannehill, and chances are I think we see Ryan Tannehill retire. He just wasn't very good in Tennessee this past year, and he's getting up there in age. He's just a washed quarterback, and it's time for him to hang up the cleats. He's definitely going to hit the open market. He does have a connection with the New York Jets. Todd Downing, our passing game coordinator, was on Tennessee's offensive staff for a few years while Ryan Tannehill was there. But just while we have that connection and whatnot, just don't sign Ryan Tannehill. please and thank you. If you want to upgrade the backup quarterback position, Ryan Tannehill would not do that. Next guy on the list is Jake Browning, and he reminds me a lot of Mike White. Mike White was drafted 2018, didn't get his first snap in 2021, balled to flip out. Jake Browning, drafted in 2019, didn't get his first NFL snap into 2023, but whenever he finally got his turn, he also balled the flip out. If he leaves Cincinnati, hits the open market, definitely think the New York Jets should be interested in him. I mean, Jake Browning led the Cincinnati Bengals almost to a playoff appearance, threw a bunch of touchdowns in his game, led the Bengals to a high-powered offense. You know, their offense never really went down in play. You know, they always kind of remained the same. Joe Burrow, obviously, he didn't have the same impact as Joe Burrow, but he kept the Bengals competitive, and that's the type of quarterback the New York Jets need. Next guy is Jamus Winston, and I love Jamus Winston. I really want the New York Jets to sign him. Whenever Aaron Rodgers went down with his injury, he was my number one guy to replace him. And the thing about Jamus Winston is that he's just a very high-character guy. Every player on the Saints loves him. Every coach on the Saints loves him. Even the city loves this guy. Like, I'm from Louisiana, and I can tell you pretty much every single Saints fan wanted Jamus Winston to be the starter this year instead of Derek Carr. Of course, after the season was going on, everyone was like, screw Derek Carr, we want Jamus Winston. But he's still the same player that threw 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions in a season. He's a straight gunslinger, but I do think a gunslinger would work with this Jets team just because of how good our defense is. And I think about a gunslinger is, yeah, while he might throw a ton of interceptions, he's also going to throw a very similar amount of touchdowns. So we keep this offense high going, keep it high energized, and I do think that type of play would work with the Jets. And the same thing can be said about Drew Lock. He's another high-character player, and he's also another gunslinger. He's going to throw you a lot of picks, but he's also going to throw you a ton of touchdowns. Not a ton, but a similar amount of touchdowns as he throws interceptions. So if the New York Jets are interested in one of those gunslinger, high-character guys, then Jamus Winston and Drew Lock definitely should be high up there on their list. Next guy is Tyler Huntley, and Huntley's another solid game manager, compares very similar to Mason Rudolph. You know, there's a lot of quarterbacks on this list that can occasionally give you a top 10 quarterback performance. I don't necessarily think Tyler Huntley could ever do that, but he is going to win you games, and he is going to keep things competitive. And he actually led the Baltimore Ravens to the playoffs in 2022 and almost won a playoff game. I don't know if he leaves Baltimore, but if he does, definitely should be someone the Jets are interested in. And the last guy on my list is Marcus Mariota. He's just another solid backup quarterback. He didn't really see a whole lot of play time this year, but he was the Falcons starter in 2022, threw 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He's just a solid backup quarterback and definitely could keep the New York Jets games competitive and potentially even win them games. And an honorable mention I have on this list is Sam Darnold, because I would be 100% okay with the New York Jets bringing Sam Darnold back as our backup quarterback. The only thing is, does Sam Darnold want to return to the Jets, and is he even going to leave San Francisco? Would be 100% okay with Sam Darnold returning, the king making his return, but I don't know if he would be up for that. But man, that would be special if Sam Darnold came back to the Jets. But those are all of our options at the backup quarterback position. Who do you guys want the New York Jets to sign as our backup quarterback? Let me know down below. But I'm your host, Jay, signing off for now. See you guys later. Peace.